Hello guys, Mr. Cooney here, and today I'm going to be reading through and commenting on the Odyssey Books 10 and 11. So let's get right to it here. Finishing up from the crazy adventures with the Cyclops. Odysseus and his men next land on the island of Aeolus, who is the Wind King, King of the Winds, and stay with him for a month. So kind of paraphrasing here, right? To extend his hospitality, Aeolus gives Odysseus two parting gifts: a fair west wind that will blow the fleet toward Ithaca, and a great bag holding the unfavorable stormy winds. Okay. Within sight of home, while Odysseus is sleeping, the men open the bag thinking it contains gold and silver. So it's kind of a repeated theme of giving into one's weaknesses or greed or curiosity. And they don't listen to Odysseus. They open it up. The bad winds escape and below the ships back to Aeolus' island. The king refuses to help them again, believing now that their voyage has been cursed by the gods, which it pretty much has, right? The discouraged mariners next stop briefly at the land of the Lastrygones, who are fierce cannibals who bombard the fleet with ships and boulders. Only Odysseus, his ship, and his crew of 45 survive the shower of boulders. The lone ship then sends to Aea, home of the goddess Circe, who is considered by many to be a witch. There, Odysseus divides his men into two groups. Eurylochus leads one platoon to explore the island, while Odysseus stays behind the ship with the remaining crew. Okay, and into the text here. So remember, all this is still Odysseus retelling all of his adventures that eventually get him to Calypso's island, who sent him to Sharia, where he is retelling all of this to King Alcinous. Okay. In the wild wood, they found an open glade around a smooth stone house, the hall of Circe, and wolves and mountain lions lay there, mild in her soft spell, fed on her drug of evil. None would attack. Oh, it was strange, I tell you. But they're switching long tails, and they faced our men like hounds who look up when their master comes with tidbits for them, as he will from table. Epic simile there, right? Humbly, those wolves and lions with mighty paws fawned on our men, who met their yellow eyes and feared them. In the entranceway, they stopped to listen there, and inside her quiet house they heard the goddess Circe. Low she sang in her beguiling voice, while on her loom she wove ambrosial fabric, sheer and bright. I'll move myself out of the way here. Next page. By that craft known to the goddess of heaven, no one would speak until Polites, most faithful and likable of my officers, Odysseus tells us, said, "Dear friends, no need for stealth. Here's a young weaver singing a pretty song to set the air a tingle on these lawns and paving courts. Goddess she is, or lady? Shall we greet her?" So reassured, they all cried out together, and she came swiftly to the shining doors to call them in, all but Eurylochus, who feared a snare. In other words, understood it was a trap, right? The innocents went after her. On thrones she seated them, in lounging chairs, while she prepared a meal of cheese and barley and amber honey mixed with brandy and wine, adding her own vile pinch to make them lose desire or thought of our dear fatherland. So once again, comfortable shortcuts and giving in to vices and relaxing is gonna delay them again, obviously, right? Scarce had they drunk when she flew after them with her long stick and shut them in a pigsty, bodies, voices, heads, and bristles, all swinish now, though their minds were still unchanged. So squealing, in they went, and Circe tossed them acorns, mast, and cornel berries, fodder for hogs who rut and slumber in the earth. In other words, she has changed them all into pigs. Okay. Down to the ship, Eurylochus came running to cry alarm. Foul magic doomed his men. But working with dry lips to speak a word he could not, being so shaken, blinding tears welled in his eyes, foreboding filled his heart. We were frantic in questioning him. At last, when we heard the tale, our friends were gone. Okay, paraphrasing here now. Eurylochus tells Odysseus what has happened and begs him to sail away from Circe's island. Against his advice, however, Odysseus rushes to save his men from the enchantress. On the way, he meets the god Hermes, who gives him a magical plant called moly to protect him from Circe's power. That makes sense, right? Still, Hermes warns Odysseus that he must make the goddess swear she will play no witch's tricks. Armed with the moly and Hermes' warning, Odysseus arrives at Circe's palace. Circe gives Odysseus a magic drink, but it does not affect him, and he threatens to kill her with his sword. Circe turns the pigs back into men, but puts them all into a trance. They stay for, a year, until Odysseus finally begs her to let them go home. It doesn't seem like a year if you're reading the whole story, right? But time just kind of slips by, right, mysteriously. She replies they must first visit the land of the dead and hear a prophecy from the ghost of Tiresias. Okay. And that takes us to book 11, The Land of the Dead. I'm going to go ahead and read in here. Odysseus and his crew set out for the land of the dead. They arrive and find a place to which Circe has directed them. Okay, once again, Odysseus narrating his own story here. Then I addressed the blurred and breathless dead, vowing to slaughter my best heifer for them before she calved at home in Ithaca and burn the choice bits to the altar fire. As for Tiresias, so Tiresias, side note here, Tiresias is kind of a character that appears throughout a lot of ancient epics. Okay, and he's just this wise person who's just kind of like ever present or ever living and present, and you would go to him and and get the wise advice of this guy. So I swore to sacrifice a black lamb, handsomest of all our flock. Then to assuage the nations of the dead, I pledged these rites, slash the lamb anew, letting their black blood stream into the well pit. So he's making the proper sacrifices. Now the souls gathered, stirring out of Erebus, brides and young men, and men grown old in pain, tender girls whose hearts were new to grief. Many were there too, torn by brazen lance heads, battle slain, bearing their bloody gear. From every side they came and sought the pit with rustling cries. I grew sick with fear, but presently I gave command to my officers to flay those sheep and the bronze cut down and make burnt offerings of flesh to the gods below, to sovereign death, to pale Persephone, right, who's the queen of the dead who ended up down there. You probably know that story. Meanwhile, I crouched with my drawn sword to keep the surging phantoms from the bloody pit till I should know the presence of Tiresias. One shade came first, Elpenor of our company. Okay, so someone who died from Odysseus' company, of course, beat them to the land of the dead because that's where you go when you die, right? And now he's seeing him there, his dead friend, who lay unburied on the wide earth as we had left him, dead in Circe's hall, untouched, unmourned, where other cares compelled us. Now I saw him there. I wept for pity and called out to him. Next page. How could you journey? How is this, Elpenor? How could you journey to the western gloom swifter of foot than I in the black lugger? He sighed and answered, son of great Laertes, Odysseus, master mariner and soldier, bad luck shadowed me, and no kindly power. Ignoble death, I drank so much wine, I slept on Circe's roof, then could not see the long steep backward ladder coming down and fell from that height. My neck bone buckled under, snapped, and my spirit found this well of dark. So partying at Circe's, he fell off the roof, basically, right? Now hear the grace I pray for, in the name of those back in the world, not here, your wife and father, who gave you bread in childhood, and your own child, your only son Telemachus, long ago left at home. Next page. And move myself out of the way again. When you make sail and put these lodgings of dim death behind, you will moor ship, I know, upon Aea Island. There, my lord, remember me, I pray. Do not abandon me, unwept, unburied, to tempt the gods' wrath while you sail from home, but fire my corpse and all the gear I had, and build a cairn for me above the breakers, an unknown soldier's mark for men to come. Heap up the mound there and implant it upon the oar I pulled my life with my companions. So he's asking if they can find his body, which isn't really there because he's in the land of the dead, and if he could have a proper burial. He ceased, and I replied, unhappy spirit, I promise you the barrow and the burial. So we convened, and grimly at a distance, so with my long sword between, guarding the blood, and the faint image the lad spoke. Now the soul of Anticlea, dead, my mother, daughter of Autoclus, now, dead now, though living still when I took ship from Holy Troy. So he has run into his mom, who he didn't even know was dead. If you're watching the whole story, she actually takes her life out of grief from waiting for Odysseus. Seeing this ghost, I grieved, but held her off through pang and pang of tears till I should know the presence of Tiresias. Soon, a dark prince of Thebes came forward, bearing a golden staff, and addressed me. Son of Laertes and gods of old, Odysseus, master of land and ways and seaways, why leave the blazing sun, O man of woe, to see the cold dead and the joyless region? Stand clear, put up your sword, let me but taste of blood, I shall speak true. At this, I stepped aside, and in the scabbard let my long sword bring home the pommeled silver as he bent down to the somber blood. Then spoke the prince of those with the gift of speech. Great captain, a fair wind and the honey lights of home are all you seek, but anguish lies ahead. The god who thunders on the land, you know who that is, Poseidon, right? Prepares it not to be shaken from your track, implacable. Next page. In rancor, the son whose eyes you blinded, one narrow strait may take you through his blows. Okay, so he's giving him direction how to get through this place. Okay. Denial of yourself, restraint of shipmates. When you make landfall in Thrinacia, first and quit the violet sea, dark on the land, you'll find the grazing herds of Helios, by whom all things are seen, all speech is known. Okay, so Helios is the sun god, and kine is another word for a herd of cattle. Okay? So he says, avoid those kine, hold fast to your intent, and seafaring brings you all to Ithaca. But if you raid the beeves, if you take them, because they're going to be starving at this point, right? I see destruction for ship and crew. Though you survive alone, bereft of all companions, lost for years in strange sail, you shall come home to find your own house filled with trouble, insolent men eating your livestock as they court your lady. Aye, you shall make those men atone in blood, but after you have dealt out death in open combat or stealth to all the suitors, go overland on foot, take an oar until one day you come where men have lived with meat unsalted, never known the sea, nor see seagoing ships with crimson bows and oars that fledge light hulls for dipping flight. The spot will soon be plain to you, and I can tell you how. Some passerby will say, what winnowing fan is that upon your shoulder? Halt, and implant your smooth oar in the turf, and make fair sacrifice to Lord Poseidon. A ram, a bull, a great buck boar, turn back and carry out pure hecatombs at home to all wide heaven's lords, the undying gods, and to each other. Then a sea-born death, soft as this hand of mist, will come upon you when you have wearied with rich old age, your country folk blessed, and peace around you. For all this shall be just as I foretold. So you might want to kind of read back over that again. He's kind of telling them what's going to happen and how to get through it. Right? A little side note about that there too. You might want to look at. Finishing off with a little paraphrase, Odysseus speaks to the shade of his mother. She tells him that Penelope and Telemachus are still grieving for him, and that his father, Laertes, has moved to the country where he too mourns his son. Odysseus' mother explains that she died from a broken heart. Odysseus also speaks of the spirits of many great ladies and men who died, as well as those who were being punished for their earthly sins. Filled with horror, Odysseus and his crew set sail. And that brings us to the next book. Okay, see you soon.